Hey guys, I'm John. We'll be talking here with my good friend Michael about how to price out a great room as a painting contractor. We are excited to share some of our knowledge of how we do it using our experience. And we've sold a lot of paint jobs over the years. Well, let's get into it.
Welcome back. Today, John and I are excited to provide another how to estimate video. We're going to be taking a look at a fairly complex great room. We're looking at a house here in Austin, Texas. Excited about this one, John. This is a pretty complicated one.
For sure, yeah. So we're gonna use a bunch of our experience, right, Michael, to help people here understand how we would price this. Michael and I have done this a lot over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years and sold millions of dollars of painting projects. So hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below. We're excited to take a look at this one for you. So yeah, I know they've got a little olive tree here for you, Michael.
Yeah, before we started recording, I was very impressed by their olive tree. I'm very jealous. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things. I was telling John that I'm growing a little tiny version of that, so I can hopefully get there someday.
One day you'll,
I
one
like
day
it.
you'll get there. One day. Growth mindset, Michael.
So, that's right,
All right,
quite
let's
literally.
let's get some dimensions here. And for those who are watching, we're using PaintScout. It is a estimating tool for painting contractors, and it's going to make it super easy here. So 22 feet. There we go. And let's go the other way. Probably there.
So as you're doing this, for those that are familiar with PaintScout, one of the challenges is that you and I have both heard, I think, is not everything is a perfect cube. So when we're typically working inside a home, we're talking about a bedroom, dining room, things like that, where they generally kind of fit into this like cube idea where we can figure out what's the length, what's the width, what's the height. And, some of the magic of PaintScout is going to give us all of those dimensions. Well, as we can pretty clearly see here, like this space, especially once you have a minute, you'll turn around, maybe show us kind of the stairway, but
Yeah.
we can see like that big, huge cutout going into the kitchen. How are we going to account for something like that? It looks like we might have some varying ceiling heights. It's hard to tell if that is on a vaulted ceiling or like an angled ceiling there. Again, I think we'll see that here in a minute. But
So yeah, I just want to get our measurements in. So for those who are watching along the right side, I was just putting some measurements in, and I just want to make sure I keep those so I don't forget them. But yes, so here we are. Here we got, obviously we got the stairwell behind us. Can't zoom out any further, but and then we've got kind of that wall that continues on all the way through. So we need to kind of decide, I think, how we're going to do this. I know there's always a couple of ways to do each thing in my mind. And I think you talked about like just being a cube or, do you do this by wall? I would argue, I think you would too. I would probably go by wall in this particular case, but
for sure.
does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
I think exactly right. So it's, again, somebody saying, hey, how do I measure this because it's not a perfect cube? The idea here is like, well, we're not going to use that, call it cube or room feature of PaintScout, but we're going to look at it as a single wall surface and then at the end group it all together. And I think like, again, that's one of the like key functionalities of PaintScout that allows you to have an accurate quote on a pretty complex room like this.
For sure. So it looks like that upper wall there's 25 feet too. So let's start throwing some of this in. So for those who
Perfect.
are watching before over on the right side, I put some measurements in, but we're going to do this a little differently.
So let's define kind of what we're painting, I guess, first of all.
Yeah,
We're just painting the walls. Does that sound good to you?
correct.
So we're just painting the walls. We're just painting the great room, or are we also painting the foyer by the front door there?
Ooh, good question. I think we do that separately.
Okay,
So just the great room.
I like it. And so it's kind of like if you can imagine, where we're standing right now in this room on the left, the areas that are kind of facing in. So where that railing at the top of the steps meets the wall, kind of on the right now, right where there's like a window cut out up there, it looks like that's going to be kind of our stopping point for like color purposes. And then we'll probably paint, I think the section on the left, it looks like it's going to need to be done and then the walls by the stairway.
So these walls here.
Yep. So I think again, similarly, like we'll stop where that railing is.
Okay. Yeah.
So like the upstairs hallway is not part of this quote.
Correct. Okay. And when you say the railing, you mean behind the railing or the front side of the railing?
So
this wall right here.
I would count both of those two walls that are kind of facing us. So
yep. Okay.
The wall like directly behind the couch, that's very triangle in shape.
Okay. Sounds good.
And then the wall, if you're walking up the steps, it would be on your right. That's also a triangle.
Okay. So
I would say like from a color design perspective, those kind of they could be a different color, but they're technically, I would say, like kind of part of this room.
Okay. Sounds good.
Do you agree?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's consider it to be that.
Sure.
And we're applying 2 coats of paint and changing colors, right? That's what we'll do here. Sure. So, all right, let's get into this. So, we had mentioned putting wall by wall, and let's show people how to do that. So, we're going to go here and add an area. Here we're going to call it custom area. Let's call it.
I would just call it like Great Room 1. If you want to label the walls, it will show up on your work order, which is great. It does help the crew. So if you want to call it like Great Room, by kitchen or something like that.
Okay, we'll do that. Great Room by kitchen. We're going to go surface. And so that wall that we're doing right now is this one right here, right?
On the right. Yep.
Yep. So it's 25 feet long. And do you remove the area below or not?
In this case, I probably would. Because it is so substantial. So I would probably not say that this is a full, typically on a 2-story, when you measure it, it is like 18 feet, somewhere in that 18 to 20. I would not say that this is 18 feet tall.
So what do you put in?
I would probably put in somewhere like 10 or 12. Personally, I would use 12, even though I know that that's not quite perfectly accurate. It's probably closer to 10. And the reason for that is it's just going to give me a little bit more time to handle some of the stuff, like the little columns, if you will, that are coming down on the, first floor there. Yeah,
so we're going to add that in. We'll do the walls and 16-foot walls. How do you feel about that as a production rate? I'm
sure.
happy with that. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're going to add in another. Actually, hold on. Let's edit this. So we're going to go. Confirm. Okay, so we can actually add another substrate in here. So let's call this one here window wall. So walls.
Perfect.
16 feet. And then if you go click into here, we can actually change that. So I think we had said initially this was, what was it, 16 feet wide? Let's just zoom out here.
Looks about right.
We'll try our measurement tool.
Yeah, so on the left, we're using Zillow, and they have on this listing a Matterport like video walkthrough, which is how we're able to do the measuring here, which is great.
Okay, 15 feet. All right. So length, we're going 15. And then here we're going, you said about 18 feet. So this one here with all the windows, how are you doing that, Michael?
I'm not taking anything out for the windows in this case. We do have to paint all those, like the window return, the drywall return, it looks like in the window, and it's not they're not big enough that I think it's going to make sense. I know that there's a lot of it, but I do have to like trim around each one or cut around each one with the brush. So I'm just going to take kind of whatever that gives me there.
Yep, I'm with you there. So let's confirm that. And we're going to go, let's do this wall right here. So I'll give you some perspective. Whoa. Okay, so we're doing that wall right there now. Let's add that in. And we're going to go walls, 16 feet. Click that into that one there. And this one is going to be, well, let's see the measurement here. Oops, measure mode. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like it's probably in the neighborhood of like 12 to 15.
Yep. 14 feet there. Perfect.
Done a couple of these.
So, yeah, exactly. 14 by 20. What do you say? 18? 14 by 18. That one's pretty much just a straight wall. What are you thinking here with the kind of cut in?
Yeah, I mean, I might add like an extra hour just to the
Yeah.
time that it gives me, just to kind
Yep.
of account for some of that. I'm not going to get too crazy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be too
Totally
difficult.
fair.
Throw an extra hour in.
Okay, so we're gonna adjust our painting by 1 hour, and then we've got the hallway. I guess that's kind of the last piece of this. So this wall here, we'll call this. And by the way, if you want to, each one of these areas, we're going to go ahead and internal label. This is going to be a so window wall, perfect. We're going to adjust this to great room.
Yep.
And within PaintScout, there's a number of different ways to do things, but this one here will do some kitchen wall, perfect. And this one here is the TV wall. Awesome. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and add our stairwell walls in. Now these ones here, we're just going to go with our standard 85, right? We don't have that same height issue.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
That makes sense to me.
Do that there. And this one here, we're going to get our measurement tool back out. Let's go from, so when you're measuring this, just as a point of, just to chat a little bit about this, are you going from that corner here or are you going from down here?
So yeah, it's a little hard to see where you're pointing to, but
Sorry.
the little section. So on the left hand side, if we're on the first floor, we're walking towards the front door. There's a little like maybe 2 foot section above your head,
Yeah.
right below the railing on the left here. So personally, I'm not going to like count that in any of my measurements.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, I might just add like an extra half hour to the time. It can also just be part of the like, I try to kind of overestimate a little bit as I go, so I don't have to worry about something that's relatively small like that.
Yeah,
That's
I
going to
agree.
take probably all of 15 minutes to paint.
100% agree with that. So let's go here and we'll, oops.
And so the way that
Measurement
I
of
would
that.
see this is instead of seeing it as like two different triangles, one towards the front, one towards the back, is if I can almost like in my mind imagine like pushing the steps back from the view that you had a minute ago.
Yeah.
It really just becomes a rectangle, right? It's essentially two triangles stacked on top of each other, forming a rectangle.
Yep.
Which again, if you kind of like in your mind erase that railing, you can kind of see that. And again, so this is where I think somebody can get really complicated, but from a surface area perspective, that's going to give you a really accurate measurement.
Absolutely. So we are at 11 feet. Yeah. So for those who, just to kind of give you, I'll just draw it here with the circle. So this whole area right here, I mean, that's going to be your wall, just one solid wall. Now the backside is going to have a little bit more prep, I imagine, just because we have that handrail. So we're going to have to take that into consideration.
Sure.
But let's throw this in now. So we're going to go. Let's call this a stairwell or staircase, and I think it was about 11. No, we'll call it 12. And that's the height. So the height here is more measurement in here. So 15, I believe it was, yeah, 15 by 11. Okay, so it's 11, height 15, perfect. So we have a full square. It's saying 2 hours of painting. That doesn't really pass the sniff test to me, because I think there's a little bit of.
Yeah, I agree. I would go up from there. I think the complexity comes from the railing, working on the steps.
Yeah.
There's a possibility you might have to put a ladder up on the steps just to get to the top corner. Hopefully not, but it's hard to say for sure. And so, yeah, that feels a little light. So I'm probably going to add an hour just for like safety / complexity.
Yeah. And for those watching, I mean, we're not taking into consideration this baseboard on the side of the rails. I mean, the side of the stairs, sorry. That's just going to be way more involved, and we can do another video on what that looks like.
For sure.
But in this case, yes, I agree with you. So let's go ahead and adjust that to 3 hours. And if you for those listening, if you have a production rate in your system, you can always have a separate one that adjusts for, a a stairwell with a railing. That's probably going to be a lower square foot per hour, but we'll get you to the same result. So let's confirm that. So now we've got the great room. We've got all the different walls in our measurements here. Let's go back here so you can take a look. And let's go here and add the area. So initially, so here's an interesting comparison. So I went in and just added it as a cube, Michael, initially.
Yep.
So living room, that came to 1,650. By going through wall by wall and adjusting for a few different things, came up with 1,500. Kind of interesting look at the whole project. But
the one thing that we didn't do that we would do, and I think again this is where every company is going to be a little different. How do you account for like setup and cleanup time?
Yeah.
How do you account for some of the ladder movements and the height and complexity and all the masking and stuff like that? So we would have a separate line item or substrate, I guess, within that great room area that we just created. And we would call it setup cleanup. And we would probably have about 5 hours for that. And that's going to account for having the height of the ladders, moving around the ladders, masking the floor, moving the furniture, protecting the furniture, masking off the stairs because we're going to have to paint above them, things like that. And so that's how we would maybe handle some of the complexity involved here.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
So I think one way or another, you might have done that again with some of your like substrates using that taller wall. But somehow I think make sure that anybody listening, make sure you do account for the fact that, there is going to be quite a bit of setup and cleanup and prep work before you even start painting. And then certainly to have to kind of put the room back together at the end.
For sure. Safe, and also do it safely, right? Like getting the ladder in, making sure you take care of that liability. So there we have it. Let me go here and I'm going to actually just archive this. So now we've got our estimate. Yeah.
In my mind, when we first looked at this, my mind said, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,750 to 2,500. Obviously, everybody's price is going to be different. Your market's different. How much you pay your team members, the benefits, the payroll burden, right? Workers' compensation and insurance cost, a lot different depending on what part of the country you're in. But hopefully, this gives somebody an idea of how to get to the right amount of time, and then they can apply their correct sales rate to that.
Absolutely. So this price here that we're showing, this is based on $85 an hour in the system. That dollar per hour charge is going to vary depending on where you are, what kind of business you're running, all those types of things, just your different costs of doing business. As well, you may want to charge paint separately from your hourly rate, and so that's going to change things as well. But as a baseline, like when we first came into this room, my head immediately jumps to $1,750 to $2,000, and that's crazy to think that like I'm in Canada, totally different market. You're in Cleveland, and we're kind of coming up to similar type cost. Now, granted, I think our hourly rates are probably similar as well. That's great.
Yeah.
So once again, hopefully that helps. Please, leave any comments below, and feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more of these exciting videos we're making about estimating. So thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.